got 25 minutes. We got to go.
Hey,
Happy Wednesday, everybody.
what is going on? Say that, nation. Happy Wednesday.
My Wednesday dance. We are halfway through the week and we're back. We're back for another episode of Say That Channel, where we are unapologetic about talking about the ugly come up of business, entrepreneurship, being a small business owner, all of those things. We've all heard those stories about how people have started from nothing and then have massive success. But what happens in the middle, right? Like what happens
Dun, dun, dun.
come up? That's what we are unapologetic about, putting some light on, shedding some light on. And so we're really excited. If this is the first time that you're with us, please go ahead and put in the comments. This is the first time you've ever seen our channel. If
Absolutely.
This is not the first time, if you're family, if you're part of Say That Nation, go ahead and put Say That Nation in the comments so we know to shout you out and welcome you back on another Wednesday. So excited to have you.
And guys, shout out to all our brand new subscribers. We've been having a lot of success there. So thank you to anyone who's ever shared one of our episodes, talked to somebody about a guest that you've met on here, reached out to a guest. We appreciate everything that you guys, our community, does in terms of getting this content out of people. And so if you are not new here, you know the way this works is we jump into a topic of today. Janelle and I kind of dice back and forth about it. And something that we've been doing new is we've been adding in other thought leaders into the conversation here, what they have to say on the topic, and then just wrapping it up from there. So without any further ado, guys, let's jump into today's topic.
Is our money mindset irrational?
I'm gonna do it again. Dun, dun, dun.
Or like the Law and Order. Dun, dun.
Oh yeah, dun. that might be copywritten, so let's be careful.
Fair enough. So okay, I'm gonna take a stab at it and say no. I think we are very emotional about or rather, I guess the answer would be yes. We're irrational, meaning I think we're very emotional about money. I think.
Ooh. Can I throw something up before you get into it? And I want to put this out to the audience as well, because you guys are probably thinking this over yourself, right? So I looked up what it means to, what money mindset means. And this is what I came up with. What is your money mindset? Your money mindset is your unique set of beliefs and your attitude about money. It drives the decisions you make about saving, spending, and handling money. So can we discuss it from that premise a little bit? Not that it may take away from what you were going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess our context.
No, just further gives clarity.
Right,
so I think the money mindset that most people have is irrational. Okay. I don't think it's based on rationality. I think it is based on emotion, and emotions are irrational. I think by definition, right? If we
emotions are irrational,
our emotions are rational.
I feel like emotions are rational. I think some of the emotions we have towards things are rational. You get angry at things that are angering. I think the level that we allow our emotions or what we
is it angering to you though? Like, is it angering to everyone? Like, to me, I think when I think rational, I think logic, and logic is if, then. There's no like when, maybe, sometimes. Right?
Well, then how does that apply to money then? What would make money something
that's logical or rational?
Yeah.
So to me, I think most people don't work out of this mental space, but there is this item costs $100. I have $50 in the bank account. I don't have enough money to buy this item. I think that's a very logical, rational thought.
Okay.
I think the emotion that comes up behind it is I'm a loser. I suck because I don't have enough money to buy the thing that I want. I don't like something, or for some people it's a motivator, and so they're like, man, I don't have $50. I only have $50 right now. Like, I gotta do something. I gotta get on my game to like, right. And so some people it ignites, and I like what's the word? Motivation is probably the best word, but it kind of, there's an excitement feeling along with it, right? It excites people. So the rationality to me is just the thing, right? This thing costs $100. I only have $50 in my bank account. I do not have enough money to buy it right now. Let's say right now. I'll even add that. But I think people start with that. That might be like the one thing it starts with, but I don't think it ends there. I think ultimately it ends in someone's head in an emotional reaction or response to what the rational thing is. But that's because I believe that thinking rationally means logic. Like it's just logic. There is no emotion. Maybe we need, okay, you answer. I'll go look up emotion and logic and rational.
Okay. So for me, and I think I understand a little bit of what you're getting at, or I agree with what you're saying. And is our money mindset irrational? It is going to obviously be, this is going to be a very personal thing to each of us. And I think this taps into a lot of the other conversations we've had where your knowledge around money will help determine that. Like I hear what you're saying. It seems on a very basic level, I don't have enough money to purchase something. The logic behind that is fairly simple. I think the irrational parts would be if you then decide to go and spend money that's not yours using like credit for something that isn't a necessity, you know, to your survival. I think maybe to your point, yes, you can talk negatively about yourself, and that is in itself a bad thing to do. But I think when you then start spending money or doing things with money that isn't yours is where the irrational part comes in. And I think, again, to other episodes, we've talked about this. The debt crisis we find ourselves in speaks to the fact that, yes, we are irrational around our money mindset. It's like, I don't need this trip right now, or I don't need that TV right now. I have a TV, and yet I'm going to charge this TV or get myself into debt to get it. And it's not going to serve me later. Financially, this is not a smart financial move.
Okay. So I love what you're saying. I want to share with everybody what I found because I think this will actually be helpful. So from this, I asked the question, are emotions irrational or rational? From this perspective, emotions can be rational or irrational, depending on whether the object of the emotion warrants the reaction. To feel something you should feel is rational. To feel something you shouldn't feel or not feel something you should is irrational. Oh, yeah. This, I think, is really interesting because I also think this is subjective. Who says you should be feeling one way or a different way? Like who says that? Like who says? So I think this is interesting, but I think the three minds probably gets to what you and I are really trying to get at this part. Oh, dang. Okay. Did it just go away?
I can still see it.
So the three minds, rational, wise, and emotional. So rational would be something like decisions are based on what makes intellectual sense, where emotional would be decisions are based on what feels good. And then wise would be striking a balance between rational and emotional minds, which is interesting. Rational also includes thinking logically and focusing on facts, where emotional is thinking and focusing on emotions. And then the wise would be living mindfully. So I guess being present to both of those. And then there's compares current experiences to past experiences as rational. Emotional is reactive and or defensive. And the wise would honor and nurture emotional mind while trying to act rationally. Interesting.
Some of this takes us back. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Suppresses or ignores emotions, and the other one is often opposed to rational mindset. Okay, so which is why they didn't keep that. Okay, got it. Well, I think that's helpful.
How so?
In that, I think like what I was saying about the money thing, right? Like this is how much it costs. This is how much you have in your bank account. And so you could just look at it that way, or you could have a feeling about it, right? Like, how does that make you feel? And so I think it's interesting that they talked about wise. So being wise is when you identify both things. It's like trying to strike a balance between, okay, this is how I'm feeling about the fact that I only have $50 and I can't afford this right now. And that feeling will either get you to do nothing, get you to do something, stay in the same place, right? So that's, I think, wise is taking into account both sides, not just looking at one or the other. It sounds like wise is when you're able to do both.
So how does it? Well, yeah. Again, but how does that make it rational? Because then in my mind, when I think of even a rational thing, when the money, if it was a question of not having enough money, a rational decision could be going to the whatever you're trying to purchase and go, hey, I only have this much now, or do layaway. We've talked about that before, or some type of program where you pay only a short portion now and then spend money on the other portion after. Sorry about that. Okay. And then spend money on the other portion, paying off the rest of it later on. That would be a rational thing to do. And that wouldn't involve any of the negative inner talk or anything like that. But is that a smart investment now? Is that smart to do that? Does that make sense?
Fair enough.
I think we got to look at what it means to be irrational with your money and so on.
And I think the irrational part is only considering emotions.
Well, you can have a positive emotion. So I don't think that makes it irrational if the emotion you have is a positive one. Oh, I only have $50. Oh, this is great. I'm halfway there.
Yeah, but you're already making something positive or negative. I'm not saying it's positive or negative. You could have a positive emotion or a negative emotion. I'm saying if you only focus on the emotion, whether positive or negative, you're looking at it emotionally. And that's, in my mind, irrational, where rational is only looking at the logics and the facts.
But I just made that point. I have half the money. That's a logical statement.
Right.
I have the positive component means I'm closer to the goal, but that's also logic. I am halfway to the goal of purchasing this thing. It's $100. I have $50. Logically, I understood that. Your context initially when you said it was, I only have $50. That even in the words you chose to use to describe your situations, put the emotions, I think. Into
so let's take out the adverbs. The product costs $100. There's $50 in the bank account.
I have half of the money
right
to the
now,
product.
As of this moment, I do not have enough money to buy the product. Right. So if the emotion is like, oh man, but I've got half of it, what can I do to get the rest of the half? That's a positive emotion. And again, if you focus only on that, I think that's an emotional reaction to the money. You could also have a negative emotional reaction, which might be like, oh, I'm a loser, blah, blah, blah. But it's still an emotional reaction. Whereas the rational is just like, this is what it is. And I think the emotion is what makes people do one thing or another. I don't think people do things just based on.
Oh, okay. So if that's the way you're leaning, then I do think there are some people who can be very rational about that. Meaning what I'm saying, I'm $50 away from the goal. No emotion. That doesn't have to be a negative or positive thing. I'm $50 away from my goal of $100 to purchase this item. And they can make that statement and not do, oh my God, I'm this or I'm that by making the statement we just said. So I think there are obviously people who are very rational about it. So I don't know if we're talking about as a whole, as a world or America. I don't think everyone falls under this irrational umbrella.
I would say the majority of people are irrational about it based on what you just said earlier, right? About the past and all that other stuff. Yeah.
All right, well, let's jump in. Let's add some other voices to it. And I know earlier, let's get to this. I saw Jeannie was signing with you. I want to get respect there, right? All right.
I was leading a session on our relationship with money. I just was curious about where people were with this at this point. This was in 2016. We had 50 people in the room. We circled up and we went around the room just to say something about your relationship with money. And I realized every person in that room was in fear about money. From the 80-year-old who I know has millions of dollars to the 20-year-old who's already $20,000 in debt. And honestly, it infuriated me. What kind of society requires that everybody participate in something that terrifies them? This feels so amiss to me.
People are not fully rational, and they make many choices that if they reflected upon them, they would do differently. There's no question about that. The major tendency is people tend to frame things very narrowly. They take a narrow view of decision makings. They look at the problem at hand and they deal with it as if it were the only problem. Very frequently, it's a better idea to look at problems as they will recur throughout your life, and then you look at the policy that you ought to adopt for a class of problems. Difficult to do.
My son is Braxton, and he was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Would be a better thing. People frame things narrowly in the sense, for example, that they will save and borrow at the same time instead of somehow treating their whole portfolio of assets as one thing. If people were able to take a broader view, they would in general make better decisions. So that is certainly one of the weaknesses of human decision making. We call it narrow framing.
First of all, I'd like to distinguish between independence and freedom. So financial freedom is like freeing your mind. Financial freedom is understanding that I'm me and there's an economy out there and I have a relationship with it, but it doesn't run my life. It's freeing my mind from the messages of the consumer culture, the messages of the economy, the messages that, a house is a starter house. No, that's my house. I could die in my house. It's like there's so many presumptions that drive us into wage slavery, debt, and it doesn't matter whether you are at the low end or the high end. If you are engaged in that sort of anxious process of more, you are not free. So the first layer of financial independence I talk about is this freedom of the mind, is freeing your mind, of saying like, I am sovereign. The economy is secondary. I will move my sovereign self into the economy for my own purposes, rather than I am a schlump and the economy is my mega boss. And I don't know, my boss seems to be as big as the sky. And so I will just let my life be run by my boss and the tax system. And I'm just going to let myself be run by this thing. No. So you are a sovereign being. So that's your first layer of financial independence, is your own sovereignty. And then the second layer is to get out of debt. And for some people, debt feels endless. And the first step to getting out of debt is stop going into debt. There's many people who've written to us who flattened their debt in a couple of years, impossible debt that was going to be endless. They would die with this debt. And once they see what the debt is doing to them in terms of the actual opportunities, the future opportunities of their lives, that's the sort of link that we try to get people to make, so that something in the future is more important than the immediate pleasure of buying one more tchotchke that you're never going to use. And the third level really is to get those 6 months of savings in liquid assets, whether it's bank accounts, some place where you can actually, within 24, 48 hours, you could realize that money. So that you have an emergency fund, so that you are not tumbled back into debt as soon as something happens amiss. You lose a job, which, many people now feel that even their very, very important and significant jobs are precarious. So you want to get out of the zone of precariousness. And part of how you get out of that precariousness is savings. And then over time, the next layer of financial independence is you start to see that surplus savings can be invested in such a way that it throws off an income. And over time, if you become a systematic and sometimes obsessive saver, and you could chart it, you can watch your passive income grow. Knowing money is your life energy, you track everything you buy. And an easy way to do it, if you don't like writing a little notebook every time you do a transaction, is just use your debit card. I said debit, not credit. You use your debit card and your bank has a complete record of all your purchases. Every month you take a look at your purchases, you sort out in categories that apply to your lifestyle. You just look at that and you kind of tell yourself the truth about whether spending your life energy in that way makes a difference.
You need to be numerate for certain kinds of decisions. So numerate people have a significant advantage over those who are not. Understanding compound interest makes a huge difference whether you're a credit card borrower or somebody who's saving. People have a very hazy idea of compound interest, and it's very detrimental. So I would say that, first of all, you need to be numerate, but many people are. Then you need to frame things broadly. I mean, it frequently goes with numeracy, but it's not quite the same thing. by taking the broad view, it is very important not to have overly strong emotional reactions to events. And what I mean by that is that most of us tend to respond to gains and to losses, to changes that happen in our life. Actually, you're better off if you
Okay, so this pasta dish is like one of my favorites.
frame things broadly, and you think you win a few, you lose a few, and you have very limited emotional response to small gains and to small losses.
There's so many ways in which we project onto money the ability to not only make us happy, but to make us better or better than other people, or safe, or, so many deep gut level emotional feelings are playing themselves out in our relationship with money.
We want more money and we want more happiness. So maybe if we get more money, we'll get more happiness. And it turns out that the relationship is really a lot more complicated than that. It's not too surprising to say that money can't buy you happiness. We've heard that phrase a lot, but that doesn't help us understand then what kind of spending will actually make us happy and what kind won't.
So we've got a certain limited time on the planet. We're going to spend a third of it sleeping. We're going to spend another third of it, commuting and showering and, and sitting at a desk and doing somebody else's bidding. Yeah, that's not a lot of life. So you think I got a third, I have a third of my waking hours are mine to do whatever I want, who am I? So it's like, it then sends it into an existential question. Who am I? What do I care about? What do I want the impact of my actions to be? What do I want to learn? What do I want to understand? What do I want to feel, taste, touch? What do I want in what Mary Oliver calls my one wild and precious life?
What we tend to find when we look at the data is that the biggest category of things that people spend on is stuff for themselves. Of course, we need to pay rent or our mortgage. We need to have a car. We need to have food and clothes. But it seems as though people are spending an inordinate amount of their money on stuff for themselves. And the biggest problem from our standpoint as psychologists is the percent of money that you spend on stuff for yourself is completely uncorrelated with how happy you are with your life. It doesn't make you unhappy. It's not like if you buy a lot of stuff, you're miserable, which sometimes we think is the case. It's just the case that it's flat. No matter how much it seems you buy for yourself, nothing really seems to happen.
Once people start to pay attention to the flow of money and stuff in their lives in this way, their consumption drops by about 20 to 25% naturally, because that's the amount of unconsciousness that you have in your spending. So when you become conscious, that falls away. Many people say they don't even know what they used to spend their money on. They just, ooh, surprise, I'm spending less. I don't know how that happened. I just paid attention. I just asked myself, is this purchase of something making me happy?
When you focus on other people, you sort of reverse the arrow from me to you. It seems that on average, when people give to others, which can be giving to charity, it can be treating a friend to lunch, it can be buying people gifts, that those actions of giving rather than keeping seem to be associated with more happiness. But another opposite of stuff for yourself is to think about changing. You can still spend on yourself, but change from stuff to something else. And lots of research over the last decade has shown that on average, when people buy experiences, it tends to pay off in more happiness than buying stuff for themselves. Often when we buy stuff for ourselves, we end up by ourselves with our stuff. Think of yourself on your phone, playing a video game, whatever else it might be. You're often alone with your stuff. Whereas experiences, yes, we do some experiences solo, but many, many experiences have built into them that they're social. If we go out to dinner or go see a movie or go on a hike, or whatever else it might be, now we're with other people. Turns out that talking to other people makes us happy. Even casual interactions with other people make us happier than sitting by ourselves in a room.
Wow.
True.
80% of children, 80, get to college having never had a conversation with their parents about money.
Yep.
Where it comes from, how it's earned, how it's spent, what debt is. You can't just give your kids, launch them into their lives without giving them the tools. So I went to what I thought would be the smartest people to talk to about this, Warren Buffett's bankers. They advise the wealthiest families in the country, and I thought, they must know more that can help my family. Turns out that these wealthy families are making even more mistakes. And I walked away from this conversation with a number of takeaways. Takeaway number one, show them the money. It's incredibly important to talk to children about money at an age-appropriate level, but you need to talk. As Buffett's banker said to me, I spoke to the richest woman in America, and she said, it's a burden if I tell my children how much money they have. And he said, it's much more of a burden to burden them with ignorance than to burden them with the truth. Number two, actually try to limit the influence of money. After doing all this research in our home, we have chores, we have allowance, we do not overlap the two. Because if you do, it turns out the kids will do the chores just for the money. You get an allowance as part of being a member of our family. But sorry, someone's got to put the dishes in the dishwasher, someone's got to make their bed, you're part of the team, you have to take care of yourself. And the last thing is, let them make mistakes. Buffett's banker chided me when I told him we're kind of forcing our kids to put their money into different pots, spend, save, give away, etc. He said, let them decide for themselves. And I said, but what if they make a mistake? Or what if they want to buy something and they've spent all their money on candy? What if they drive into a ditch? And his answer was one of my favorite quotes in The Secrets of Happy Families. He said, it's much better to make a mistake with a $6 allowance than a $60,000 a year salary or a $6 million inheritance. The point is, when the kids are young, when the stakes are lower, let them make their own mistakes. Then you're there to pick them up. You don't want to get that call when they're 24 and suddenly they're in debt and they've made bad decisions and they're really in a hole.
There's several ways to expand markets. One is you export, and another is to educate your citizens to want more than they need. And then you've got an infinite way you got an infinite market called the endless willingness of people to buy into the story of more is better and keep buying stuff. So that is the old roadmap. Growth is good, more is better, game over. The new roadmap says that there is something called enough. And enough is not sort of like this oppressive ceiling that, okay, I've got enough and I can't have any more. No, enough is this sort of vibrant, vital place. What we teach is an awareness about the flow of money and stuff in your life in light of your true happiness and your sense of purpose and values. And that your enough point, having enough, is having everything you want and need to have a life you love and full self-expression with nothing in excess. It's not minimalism, it's not less is more, because sometimes more is more, but it's that sweet spot, it's the Goldilocks point. And so enough for me is like one of the absolute fulcrums between the old roadmap for money and the new roadmap for money.
Get smarter faster with new videos every week from the world's biggest thinkers.
Man, I really love that.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that really was. Added on a lot of stuff that I didn't even consider.
I love that they talked about the kids, right? Like what to teach kids, because I know as a former child, I wish I would have been given more mistakes. I love the idea of not associating money with the chores. Yeah, he specifically says limit the influence of money, right? So like money, you get money just because you're a part of this family. Like I love that, and that somebody still needs to do their laundry, like take care of all that other stuff. Like that made a lot of sense to me. Like if I could go back, I'd almost want that to be a part of my life. I also thought that the very first thing that she said, I'm so sorry I didn't get her name, but she said everybody was like fearful of money when she did this whole like group activity. And her question was, why are we forced into something that we're all terrified of?
Oh, yeah. At one point, I don't know, there's like a trigger alert. She seemed sad when she was talking about just sitting at your desk and or just that topic alone. I was just like, yeah, be careful there.
I mean, I agree. One, why are we forcing people to do something to get involved in something that they're terrified of? We need to change that paradigm and how we look at money. And two, the experiences stuff that she talks about. So your point about sitting behind a desk, right? It's the life is in thirds, third sleeping, third doing whatever.
Cleaning and traveling and those different things.
And sitting at your desk. And the other thing is like, you get to do with it what you want to do. Something and experiences. Like the other guy said, I saw that he was from the Harvard Business School. He said that and giving and experiences are what are more associated with happiness than anything else.
Yeah.
Particularly buying stuff.
Well, good. Also, you led there. So that to me was what stood out not the most, but stood out. This idea, and I think we've been listening to a few different speakers talk about this idea. We're consuming more than we need, and we've been it's just being marketed to us that the more stuff we have, the happier we'll be. And to the studies that he shared, that's not what we're finding. You're not finding that if you have more stuff, you'll be happier. You're just sad with the stuff you have now, with the more stuff. And I've made this statement before. It's like in some of the worst times in my life, being in a room and being so focused on the situation and thinking, dude, even if you had the nicer home, even if the room that you were in was nicer, you could still be feeling as sad or depressed as you are right now. So it can't be the space you're in that is affecting your mood. You know what I mean? Because nothing's physically wrong with me. So what's leading to this? The space is just a space. Street, and it's just a very interesting thing to recognize when you're able to see that different things won't necessarily make you happier, or having things won't necessarily always make you.
It's like the distinction between financial freedom and financial independence. I loved her idea of that. So financial freedom is freeing your mind to what you're talking about, right? Like it's a mindset that you have, something doesn't matter the space, your mindset about that space is what's going to ultimately having you feeling depressed or sad or et cetera, versus financial independence. And that is a sovereignty that is without the systems with which we live in that tell us this amount of money is good or not. And she ended up, she had the ways in which you do that: get out of debt, do the 6 months of your rainy day fund, and then invest the surplus. That's how you get financial independence. But I think she ended with a really great mindset of there is an enough, and not enough to make you small, but the lifestyle that I want, where I could be the most self-expressive that I need to be, or that I want to be, desire to be. That doesn't need it may not.
It doesn't have to feel like a ceiling. Yeah, you don't need a 16-bedroom mansion for that.
Right.
I definitely know we're way over on time. So guys, if you got a lot of value from today's episode, make sure you drop that in the comments. We'll definitely make sure we tag the episode, tag the video we just shared with you guys, so that you guys can go back and check it out on your own. And until we see you guys next week, we'll leave you with, as always, remember, you deserve the good life. Say that. We'll see you guys soon.